Hello, my name is Alan Young and I'm here at the 40th anniversary meeting of the British Association for Psychopharmacology being held in Cambridge, and I'm speaking to Professor Barbara Sahakian. Barbara,
yes.
Thanks very much for taking the time to speak to us.
My pleasure.
I wonder if we can start by you telling us a little bit about your current position and roles and research.
Well, at the moment I'm Professor of Clinical Neuropsychology in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Cambridge, and I'm also associated with the MRC Wellcome Trust Behavioral and Clinical Neuroscience Institute. Basically what I do is run a psychopharmacology laboratory there. I'm very interested in the neuropsychiatric disorders. I work on Alzheimer's disease, depression, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and obsessive compulsive disorder in the main. And I'm very also interested in the problems of depression. And I study cognitive function because in all these conditions there's problems of cognition. So I'm looking for ways to enhance cognition and to help with treatments in order that patients have a better functional outcome, quality of life, and well-being. And part of that, of course, is using cognitive enhancing drugs to try to boost their cognition. So that's a lot of my work is geared at that. And so I work with drugs such as methylphenidate, Ritalin, modafinil, atomoxetine. And we also do some work in other areas, so in brain injury and in some of the more neurological disorders such as Parkinson's disease.
Thanks very much. Can you tell us a bit about how you got into research, perhaps starting off with your undergraduate days, and what attracted you to this field?
Yeah, so I was doing psychology as an undergraduate, and I think I might have taken one of the first courses as an undergraduate in psychopharmacology. And I took it from a Professor Al Sorensen, who had studied at Yale. And when I was coming around to doing my PhD, I was quite interested in trying to understand why children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, who are already very active, would be treated with a stimulant drug such as Ritalin methylphenidate. So I spoke to Al Sorensen about this, and I was looking at different universities, and he said, "You must go work with Leslie Iverson." He said, "I've always wanted to work with him and I never got a chance to." And so I wrote to Leslie actually, and he said, "Well, great, come over, but you should work with my wife, Susan Iverson, because she's interested in the behavior." So that's really how I got started in there. So I did my PhD in psychopharmacology, looking at the effects of stimulant drugs on actually animal models at that stage. And I think we did one of the first animal models which really looked at social isolation in animals as a way to look at these neurodevelopmental changes. And so that's what I studied for my PhD. And after that, I went back to America for a while to work with David Drachman. I did my postdoc at MIT with Dick Wertman, then I went to work with David Drachman, and that was my first university post. And we set up one of the first memory clinics.
Really?
So that was very influential for me because I was very interested in Alzheimer's disease and finding treatments for Alzheimer's disease. And this was a great opportunity. David Drachman had been working in the field for such a long time. So that was very exciting. So we had one of the first of memory clinics set up for early detection of Alzheimer's disease. And then eventually I came back to the UK, and then again I eventually got to the Institute of Psychiatry, and that was very nice, very exciting times. Robin Murray and Jeffrey Gray and Ian Stollerman and all sorts of exciting people there. And with Raymond Levo, we set up one of the first memory clinics in the UK. So that was exciting as well. And we did some of the first proof of concept studies for the cholinesterase inhibitor drugs. So, you know, the Aricept, donepezil type of drugs that are now used and approved by NICE as treatments for Alzheimer's disease. And after that, I eventually, when I had my children, I moved to Cambridge because it was difficult having split households.
Sure. And you've been in Cambridge ever since?
I've been in Cambridge ever since.
Yes. Now, can you tell us a bit about your involvement with the BAP over the years? I mean, obviously you've just become the past president, but you've been involved in many different areas of BAP for a considerable period of time.
Yeah, so one of my favorite things that I love to do is to organize symposium, because I find it very exciting to get the preclinical and clinical together, and I really find that a very sort of creative thing to do, so I really enjoy promoting some of the symposium. And then as president-elect, I brought in some new initiatives where we could look at particular issues that were kind of hot topics in British psychopharmacology and indeed international psychopharmacology.
Yes.
So that was really good. And so I was on council for some years, and then eventually became president-elect and president, and now here I am a past president.
And how have you really seen the BAP change? What's your reflection on that over the past few years?
Well, you know, I think it's always been one of my most favorite. The annual meeting has always been one of my most favorite meetings, along with the American College of Neuropsychopharmacology and things like that. The quality and the science in the meetings is so outstanding. So I think that's been pretty well maintained, and I think it's, if anything, it's getting better, but it's always been really high quality and very exciting meeting to come to. So I've always enjoyed that. And I think we're very lucky. We have a lot of young people coming up now, rising stars, so they're we can turn the mantle over to them because they're very interested in psychopharmacology. And I think psychopharmacology will be changing a bit because I think we used to think much more, and when, you know, especially with the general practitioners, because they don't have their time limited with their patients. It used to be very much, you know, here's a drug, and let's see how it does, and you know, and then people come back and say they have a problem with the dose or side effects or whatever. But now I think it's getting to be a much more holistic approach to psychopharmacology, so that people are looking at combined treatments with psychological treatments, and of course, you know, nice guidelines always say these drug treatments should be within a psychosocial framework, but I think more and more that's the case. And I think also people are looking more towards functional outcome when we look at how can various treatments, whether they be pharmacological or psychological, how can these various treatments actually improve the person's ability to function in their job or at home, and have a good quality of life and sense of well-being. So I think that's what I've noticed as a change, is we are moving much more into a holistic type of approach in psychopharmacology. And
you'd see that continuing in the future, really?
I think so, yes, absolutely. And even more in some ways, because finally I think people are beginning to understand the massive problem that mental health disorders pose for the individual, the family, and also society, because of the cost of them, and the fact that, you know, we want to see people flourishing in society, everybody, not just some of us. So I think that we'll be moving to early detection, early effective treatment, and as that comes on board, it will be much more considering the person as a whole, and how can we look at how they're functioning within their environment.
Now, this is the 40th anniversary of the BAP. It's the 40th anniversary meeting. It's great to be back in Cambridge. How do you see the future for the BAP?
Well, I think the future's in good hands, because we have so many great young people at this meeting presenting posters, giving some talks. It's absolutely fabulous. And I think what I really like about BAP, and what I see continuing and maybe changing into the future, is that it's really like a family. I mean, the older people in the area take a great interest in the younger people, and they want to see them flourish and promote them, and see them have a good career and be able to help people with mental health disorders in the future. So there's a lot of input into young people. We do so much for training. It's very exciting. And on the other hand, we have all these rising stars that are just amazing. When you go to their talks or talk to them at their posters, it's very exciting, and they're working on all sorts of areas: addiction, depression, schizophrenia. So I can see that in the future, you know, I think things will be better and better as the society grows.
Professor Barbara Sahakian, thank you very much.
Thank you.